So a little while ago, I went to Six Flags Magic Mountain and I didn't really make a full video on the park. And for a lot of parks on that scale, I'll do an ultimate review where I go over every detail of the park, but this park was different. This is the park with the most coasters out of every park on the planet, so I felt like it would only be right to do a ranking of every single coaster. Now, I didn't get to go on everything. There were a couple rides closed that I won't be raking. Those rides were Goliath, Superman, Riddler's Revenge, and X2. So yes, my ranking won't be including probably the headliner of the park because it was unfortunately closed on my one visit I will probably ever have to that park. I also didn't go on any of the kiddie coasters because that's stupid. But enough dilly-dallying, let's just get right into the rankings. There's a ton of rides to get through and neither of us have all day here, so let's just go. In last place is Ninja, the Aero suspended swinging coaster. And this is not necessarily a bad ride. Actually, neither of these last two picks are really bad rides. They just don't really do enough to warrant me putting them higher. They're boring is what I'm trying to say. The swinging novelty is kind of cool, and this is actually one of the more scenic coasters in the park, which kind of play off of each other really nicely, but that's not really what I'm looking for in a coaster. It's more of a fancy, slightly thrilling monorail. Also, the lift at the end is a joke. It's literally just poor design. They couldn't find a way to bring the cart back up to the hill, so they just added another lift into the station. I'm fine with lifts in the middle of the ride as long as it's building up to something like a big second half or at least a big finale. But just going back to the station is such a band-aid fix to such a lazy problem. I know this is a very inoffensive ride to a lot of people and it's not trying to compete with the other monsters in the park, but for me it just doesn't do enough to make it higher on the list. This is actually gonna be a quicker one because it has the same problems as Ninja, just minus the lift at the end. This is just a boring ride, and I get that it's a pioneer and whatever, blah, 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 but it just doesn't really do anything. It doesn't go anywhere. It's just a lot of bank turns around the front of the park and some really shallow drops. The loop is cool as a spectacle, but when you're on the ride, you're like, oh, damn, that's a loop. Then it's over. Like, there's a dozen other generic loops in this park that are honestly better than this one. I know this ride is historic and I know a lot of people love it for that, but the history isn't bringing this higher in my ranking. Okay, I want to do these together because I feel like these are kind of the same ride, just from different generations. They're both really rough, but really intense sit-down loopers. Viper might be a hair rougher, but honestly, in that case, I feel like it gives it more character. Like, Viper's roughness is like a husky rumble, like you're in a minecart. I don't know where I got that analogy, but you get what I'm trying to say. Scream just has a squeaky rattle that just bothers you the entire ride. The restraints are pretty much the same, and while Viper isn't built in the parking lot, its setting isn't exactly anything to write home about. But the main thing that puts Viper ahead of Scream is the layout. The huge first drop, the high up loops, the bat wing, and those violent turns are all more interesting and just more fun than the copy and paste B&M looper layout from Scream. I mean, it is literally a copy and paste of Bizarro at Great Adventure. They're both not amazing rides, but I also think they're both overhated. That being said, the rides actually get good after these, so I can't put them higher. Pretty much every Six Flags has a Batman the Ride clone, and pretty much every Batman clone is good. These are really intense, whippy, fast-paced, loud, every single roller coaster adjective you can think of rides. The corkscrews always hit, the first drop always surprises you, and if you sit in the back, I can almost guarantee you a gray out. Try to hit this though later in the day because you want to give it some time to warm up, because if it's not warmed up, it's just a really average looping invert. It's only once it gets running when it comes alive. I know these rides are everywhere, but there's a reason that they're everywhere. They're just really good rides. This is a very average GCI Woody, and even so, it's one of the better rides in the park. GCIs are just very solid rides, and this one is no different. This is also, for some reason, really well themed in the line. I don't have footage of it, but I'm pretty sure there was like flipped over cars and strobe lights and dark rooms with computers in the line. Like, I don't know, they went all out for this one queue. There isn't theming during the ride, but that's kind of to be expected on the GCI wooden coaster. There's not much that they can really do about that when you're flying that fast. Bobs and weaves throughout the structure with quick pops of airtime. I mean, it does pretty much everything you'd want and expect out of a wooden coaster. The station flyby is also a nice touch. This is all the way in the back of the park, but it's definitely worth a ride because it never really has a line. It's a bit rough, but it's not like jackhammering you or anything. I've definitely been on much rougher wooden coasters. Overall, this is a great ride and you should not skip it. I wanted to put this ride higher because it has a lot of tricks up its sleeve, but I just can't because of that ending. You launch out of the tunnel into the top hat above the loop and you finally crest over into the biggest drop of the ride, the grand finale. It breaks halfway down. What the f? It's really just a huge buzzkill on what's supposed to be the coolest part of the ride. And it would be, but they ruined the whole thing in like 2 seconds. But there is one redeeming factor, and believe it or not, it's kind of a spoiler because they hit it pretty well. So here's your spoiler warning for a roller coaster. Skip forward like 30 seconds if you don't want to hear it. 3, 2, 1, Iron Man dies. Okay, so you get into the tunnel right before the top hat finale and you stop. So you think, okay, they're gonna count us down, they're gonna launch us into the top hat, and it's gonna be fun. But then without any warning or explanation, you launch backwards, go halfway up the spiral, then just come down and launch forwards into the top hat in a rolling launch. It's a nice touch they added because really, they didn't have to do that. They could have just launched forward and no one would have batted an eye. But the backwards shows that they were really trying, and the fact that they hide it from the park makes it even better. Also, the first loop's hang time is insane, but I feel like that's kind of self-explanatory. You really feel like, oh, this one's gonna be the one, it doesn't make it every time you crawl through it. This ride is a little overrated, but it's still really fun. For the most part, it's just a nice scenic fly around the front of the park. The ride is built really high off the ground, so you can really see a lot around you, but then out of nowhere, you hit with probably the most demonic element known to man with the pretzel loop. Like, what even is this? Pretzel loops are fun, but this big of a pretzel loop seems like kind of overkill. It's not like unenjoyable, but a part of me kind of wishes it wasn't there. Or maybe if they moved it up, you went straight into the pretzel loop after the drop so you don't have to think about it the entire ride, because it does kind of close out the ride. There's really not much after, so you do kind of have that in the back of your mind the whole time that you're flying around in the beginning. The theme is cool though, even though they don't really do that much with it, and the new color scheme looks really clean. Overall, this is a very good ride, but the next 3 just take it to the next level. This is one of the most unique rides of the park, and it's not one of those quirky rides that only gets by because of its gimmicks. This just is a really good ride all around. The launches are great, the airtime pops are strong, the inversions are fun, and there are even some genuinely intense moments towards the end. The theme is also really cool, even though like the shed pit stop thing is kind of lame. At least they tried. Also, the fact that you race every single time is just a lifesaver, which we'll talk about again soon in a much less positive light. Like, it really makes the ride so much better. If this didn't have a racing aspect, this would kind of be a very average launch coaster, but the fact that both elements kind of play off of each other makes them hit all better. That was really broken English. This ride just has a lot of character and charm to it. I really like it, but it's not better than the 2 RMCs at the top. So at number 2, we have... Okay, yeah, I know, this is a hot take, but I actually like Wonder Woman more than Twisted Colossus. Actually, you know what? I'm combining these 2. Wonder Woman is number 1. I really like Twisted Colossus a lot, but it's missing that element. Like, Wonder Woman has many that elements. The first drop, the big camelback, and the stall are all that elements. Twisted Colossus doesn't really have one of those. It has a lot of really good ones, but nothing that defines it. You know, when people talk about Steel Vengeance, they always talk about the Outer Bank, or Iron Rattler, they always talk about the dive off the quarry. Twisted Colossus doesn't really have that. Don't get me wrong, all the elements are great, but nothing stands out as amazing. And then there's the racing. When this ride races, yes, it's better than Wonder Woman. It's just more fun. It's not like a better ride like layout wise than Wonder Woman, but it's just more fun. But here's the thing, like 90% of the time that you do this ride, you will not race. And even when you do get a quote unquote race, it's never perfectly lined up. The front of the blue will probably be lined up with like the back of the green or something like that. I don't know. There's never truly side-by-side racing like there is on West Coast Racers. It still is an amazing ride though, but I do want to talk about Wonder Woman because that is the number 1. Wonder Woman blew my expectations out of the water. This thing is just so much better than Jersey Devil. I don't know what wheels they change, or slick track, or greased wheels, or maybe just California heat, but whatever it is that they did, it makes this ride run light years faster than Jersey Devil. Every element hits, and there are 3 that stand out as excellent. The first drop will launch you out of your seat, especially in the back. Then the camelback will do it all over again right before you go into the 0G stall that seems like it'll never end. This is one of those rides that if you ride in the back, it's a completely different beast because the trains are so long and you feel it on all of those elements. Give this ride a chance because I know it's really easy to dismiss as the inferior Raptor model, but trust me, it's sure to surprise you. And that's just about it for the rankings. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If there's anything you would switch or anything I need rerides on. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time.